At 7:42 in the morning on Friday, May 8th, 2026, Alex Jangu felt the ground move. He was a mountain guide. He had climbed Mount Dukono on the Indonesian island of Halmahera many times. He knew what tremors felt like. He knew what came after them. He turned to his two German clients. "We have to run down," he told them. He saw small rocks and gravel sliding down because of the tremors. He told his clients to run. Two groups of local tourists, one group of 9 people already close to the rim, another group videoing for content, were above him. "When we were about 100 meters away, I saw 2 groups of local tourists," he told CNN. "I hope they are still alive," he said, in footage filmed while the mountain erupted behind him. CNBC, "They were not all alive. 3 hikers, 2 Singaporeans and an Indonesian, died in the eruption. 20 hikers were on the slopes when Mount Dukono erupted. An ash cloud rose 10 kilometers into the air." CBS News, 20 hikers, on a mountain that had been closed to visitors for 21 days, because scientists had already seen what was coming. Stay with me, because the eruption is the story everyone is covering right now. The ash cloud, the rescue operation, the bodies that cannot be recovered yet because the mountain is still erupting. The Singaporean families waiting for news, the Indonesian government responding, all of it real, all of it happening. But the story that exists underneath this, the one that explains why 20 hikers were on a mountain that had been officially closed for 21 days, inside a restricted zone, on a volcano that Indonesian scientists had been watching escalate for weeks, is not about the volcano. It is about a system failure, about who closed the mountain and when, about the 9 Singaporeans who came from another country to climb a peak that their government was not warning them about the guide who recognized the tremors and survived because of 21 years of accumulated knowledge that nobody climbing for content had, and about one word, that the head of Indonesia's geology agency used in her statement this morning. That word is booming. We are going to get to what it means. Stay with me. First, the volcano. Because this is not a volcano that most people outside Indonesia have heard of, and the reason it is not famous is the reason 20 people were climbing it on a closed Friday morning. Mount Dukono is located on Indonesia's eastern Halmahera island in North Maluku province. Indonesia sits on the Ring of Fire, a band around the Pacific Ocean where earthquakes and volcanic activity frequently occur. The country has about 130 active volcanoes. CNN, 130 active volcanoes in one country, the most volcanically dense nation on Earth. Indonesia's volcanic inventory is so vast that individual peaks disappear into statistical background, unnamed in international coverage, unmonitored by tourists, unknown to the safety advisories that appear on travel websites when a Bali itinerary is booked. Mount Dukono is not Bali. It is not Krakatau. It is not Merapi or Bromo or Rinjani, the peaks that appear on travel bucket lists because they are beautiful, accessible, and thoroughly photographed on social media. Mount Dukono is a remote stratovolcano on a remote island in eastern Indonesia, a part of the archipelago that most Indonesian tourists from Java or Bali have never visited. It is the kind of volcano that attracts the specific subset of adventure travelers who are done with the famous peaks and want something raw, something less crowded, something authentic. The area had been closed to visitors since April 17th after scientists observed an increase in volcanic activity. Authorities had told residents and tourists to stay 4 kilometers from the Malupang Warirang crater, which is the center of the volcanic activity. CNN closed since April 17th, 21 days before the eruption. The scientists at Indonesia's Center for Volcanology and Geological Hazard Mitigation, PVMBG, had seen the escalation coming. They issued the closure. They designated the 4-kilometer exclusion zone. And on the morning of May 8th, 20 hikers were inside it. Here is the sequence of events as they have been confirmed from on-the-ground sources. The eruption began at 7:42 a.m. local time on Friday. The head of Indonesia's government geology agency described the early morning eruption as accompanied by a booming sound and a thick smoke column rising, some 10 kilometers from the summit of Mount Dukono in North Maluku province, Georgia Forestry. Commission, 10 kilometers. The ash column from Mount Dukono's May 8th eruption rose 10 kilometers into the atmosphere, the same altitude as a commercial aircraft's cruising height, the same distance as the drive from one end of central Manhattan to the other, straight up, from a crater in the jungle of Halmahera Island. The direction of the ash distribution leaned northward toward residential areas in Tabelo City. Officials said residents should be vigilant for volcanic ash rain. The smoke could be dangerous for public health and risked disrupting transportation services. Georgia Forestry commissioned Tabelo City, the largest settlement in North Halmahera Regency, population approximately 30,000, placed under ash watch on a Friday morning, not an emergency, a precaution. The main danger on May 8, 2026, was not to Tabelo City. It was on the mountain. North Halmahera Police Chief Erlikson Pasaribu confirmed. 9 foreigners and 11 local hikers were climbing Mount Dukono at the time of the eruption. CNBC 9 foreigners. 9 of the 20 climbers were from Singapore, a country 2,700 kilometers away, a city-state where volcanoes do not exist, where the concept of a closed volcanic zone is an abstraction unless you seek it out specifically. They had traveled to Halmahera. They had ascended a mountain that had been officially closed for 21 days. And at 7:42 in the morning, the mountain announced itself. Here is the detail that should stop you cold. Alex Jangu, the guide who ran when he felt the tremors, was the person who filmed the eruption footage that is now on every news site on Earth. Standing on the slope of Mount Dukono while it erupted behind him, he said something into the camera that no headline has quoted in full. Previously, when there was an eruption, there would be a single blast and then it was over. This time, the eruption started at 7:42 a.m., and by the time we came down, the intensity was still the same. Rocks were still coming out of the crater. Georgia Forestry Commission. Still the same intensity. By the time they came down, hours after the initial eruption, the mountain did not produce one dramatic explosion, and then quiet. It continued. Sustained. Rocks still ejecting from the crater. Ash still rising. The column still climbing. This matters for the rescue operation in a specific and devastating way. Due to ongoing eruptions, the situation is still considered unsafe for evacuation. So, the joint team is still waiting for the right time to begin the search. North Halmahera Police Chief Erlikson Pasaribu said, Friday afternoon, the bodies of the 3 deceased remain on the mountain. Georgia Forestry Commission. The bodies are still on the mountain, not because rescuers do not know where they are, not because the terrain is impassable, because the mountain is still erupting, because the same volcanic activity that killed 3 hikers on Friday morning is still active on Friday afternoon, preventing the recovery of the people it killed. Search operations have been suspended for Friday. They will resume on Saturday. CNBC Saturday, the families of 2 Singaporean citizens and 1 Indonesian hiker are waiting for a day to pass before their loved ones can be brought down from a mountain that should have been out of bounds when they climbed it. Here is the structural question that this disaster forces into the open. The mountain was closed on April 17th. That is a documented official action by Indonesia's PVMBG. The closure was not obscure. It was not buried in a technical bulletin. It was a public safety directive issued after scientists observed an increase in volcanic activity. The area had been closed to visitors since April 17th after scientists observed an increase in volcanic activity. CNN. April 17th to May 8th is 21 days, 3 weeks. The scientists watched the escalation for 3 weeks and maintained the closure. And 20 hikers climbed anyway. 9 of them were from Singapore. That means they traveled internationally, booked flights, arranged accommodation, organized gear, hired local guides, or joined a group in the 21-day window when the mountain was officially closed. At some point in that planning, the closure either did not reach them, was known to them and dismissed, or was known to their guides and not disclosed. Indonesia's disaster agency urged tourists and locals not to carry out activities on Mount Dukono while volcanic activity remained elevated, adding that people should always follow instructions from local authorities and the Center for Volcanology and Geological Hazard Mitigation. CNBC, always follow instructions from local authorities. That is the post-eruption statement. The instructions were in place. The closure was active. The 4-kilometer exclusion zone was designated. What was not in place, what the structure of Indonesian volcano tourism has never fully solved, is the enforcement mechanism between the scientific closure order and the hikers who show up at the trailhead on a Friday morning. Indonesia has 130 active volcanoes. It has 1 Center for Volcanology and Geological Hazard Mitigation. It has 1 national search and rescue agency, Basarnas. And it has thousands of kilometers of hiking trails on dozens of active volcanoes that attract domestic and international visitors who have discovered, through Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, that Indonesia's remote eastern volcanoes offer something that the famous western peaks no longer can. Solitude, rawness, the feeling of being first. Here is what is not making headlines about the Mount Dukono disaster. This is not the first time hikers have died on an Indonesian volcano they should not have been climbing. The pattern is documented, repeated, specific. Mount Merapi in West Sumatra. December 3rd, 2023, an eruption that sent pyroclastic flows down the slopes while 75 hikers were on the mountain. 23 of them died. The volcano had been showing elevated activity. A 3-kilometer exclusion zone was in effect. Hikers climbed anyway. Mount Ili Lewotolok in East Nusa Tenggara, March 2021. Multiple hikers caught in an eruption during a period of heightened activity. Mount Semeru, December 2021. An eruption that killed dozens, with fatalities including people who had re-entered restricted zones after an initial evacuation. The pattern is not. Volcano erupts unexpectedly and kills hikers. The The pattern is volcano shows elevated activity, scientists issue restrictions, hikers enter restricted zones, volcano erupts, hikers die. Indonesia's disaster agency BNPB has repeatedly called for stronger enforcement of volcanic exclusion zones after multiple incidents involving hikers in restricted areas. PVMBG issues technical bulletins and alert levels, but the enforcement of physical exclusion requires coordination with local police, park rangers, and regional governments, a coordination chain that has historically produced gaps, CBS News gaps, between the scientific closure and the physical barrier, between the PVMBG bulletin and the hiker at the trailhead, between the 4-kilometer exclusion zone on a map and the 4-kilometer distance from the crater rim, where a group of 9 Singaporeans and 11 Indonesians were standing at 7:42 a.m. That gap is not a technical failure. It is not a monitoring failure. It is an enforcement and communication failure. And it has produced the same outcome in Indonesia multiple times in the last 3 years. Now, the most specific detail in this disaster. Alex Jangu was on Mount Dukono at 7:42 a.m. on May 8, 2026. He was guiding 2 German tourists. He felt the tremors. He recognized them. He told his clients to run. Jangu described the group that was above him at the time of the eruption. One group of 9 people already close to the rim, another group videoing for content. "I hope they are still alive," he said on camera. Filmed while the mountain erupted behind him. CNBC videoing for content. That phrase, "in the middle of an eruption, with rocks still coming from the crater, with ash rising 10 kilometers, is the specific detail that tells you everything about who was on Mount Dukono on May 8th and why. Not professional volcanologists, not geological survey teams, not experienced mountaineers with satellite phones and emergency protocols. Tourists videoing for content. The same technological ecosystem that made Mount Dukono discoverable, that put it on the radar of 9 Singaporeans looking for something beyond the famous peaks, also put them on its slopes during a 21-day closure, holding cameras while a mountain that was producing booming sounds and elevated seismicity prepared to erupt at them. Jangu said Mount Dukono's May 8th eruption was the biggest he had ever witnessed. He and his German clients survived because we were in the safe radius. Georgia Forestry Commission. The safe radius. The guide who had climbed this mountain many times knew what the safe radius was. He felt the tremors, recognized their character, and made a decision in seconds that saved 3 lives. The hikers near the rim had not been given that knowledge, or had been given it and chose to be closer anyway. 3 of them did not come back down. Here is the specific international dimension that makes this disaster more than a domestic Indonesian safety failure. 9 of the 20 hikers were from Singapore. 3 hikers, 2 Singaporeans and an Indonesian, died. 17 of the 20 climbers were safely evacuated by Friday evening. 2 were still unaccounted for as of the latest official update. CBS News Singapore is a city-state with no volcanoes, no mountains above 166 meters, and no domestic volcanic risk awareness infrastructure. It is also a wealthy, internationally mobile population with a strong outdoor recreation culture and a documented interest in Indonesian island adventures. The Singapore Ministry of Foreign Affairs has not published any specific travel advisory for Mount Dukono. The Singaporean hikers who died this morning made their travel decisions without the benefit of a government-level warning that the specific mountain they were climbing had been closed 3 weeks before their arrival. Indonesia's PVMBG issued the closure. Indonesia's disaster agency urged compliance. Indonesia's police chief is now at the monitoring station in Mamuya village confirming the deaths. But the 9 Singaporeans who organized this trip, who booked their flights, who found their route, who planned their approach to a remote volcano on a remote island, did so in an information environment in which the closure of Mount Dukono from April 17th was a document in an Indonesian government geological bulletin. Not a notification on the travel booking platform they used, not an alert on the Instagram account of the adventure guide who promoted the route, not a banner on the Google search result that appeared when they typed Mount Dukono hiking. That information gap between the technical closure order and the tourist planning their climb is not unique to Singapore. It is not unique to Mount Dukono. It is the structural condition of volcano tourism in Indonesia, in the Philippines, in Guatemala, in Japan, everywhere that active volcanoes exist alongside Instagram accounts promoting them. So ask yourself 3 questions. Mount Dukono was closed to visitors on April 17th after scientists observed an increase in volcanic activity. A 4-kilometer exclusion zone was established around the Malupang Warirang crater. The eruption occurred on May 8th, 21 days after the closure, killing 3 hikers inside the restricted zone while the mountain was still officially closed. The closure order was issued. The exclusion zone was designated. The scientific process worked exactly as designed. 20 hikers were inside the closed zone anyway on the morning of the eruption. Between April 17th and May 8th, someone, a guide, a group organizer, a travel company, an individual with a car, transported 20 hikers to the trailhead of a closed volcano. What is the specific legal and regulatory mechanism in Indonesia's North Halmahera Regency that is supposed to prevent access to a closed volcano? And why did it not prevent 20 hikers from reaching the summit of one? CNN guide Alex Jangu felt the tremors at 7:42 a.m., recognized their character from years of experience on this specific volcano, and told his German clients to run. They survived because they were in the safe radius. The hikers near the rim, including those videoing for content, did not have the same knowledge or made a different decision. The difference between Jangu's outcome and the outcome of the 3 hikers who died this morning was not luck. It was geological literacy, the specific knowledge of what tremors on this specific mountain mean and how much time remains between the first tremor and the eruption. That knowledge is acquired through experience. It is not available on the Instagram page that made Mount Dukono discoverable to adventure tourists. It is not on the travel blog that rated it as an off-the-beaten-path gem. What is the standard of geological safety information that Indonesian guides must demonstrate before leading international tourists onto an active volcano? And who enforces it? Georgia Forestry Commission. And if this is the 3rd significant volcanic hiking disaster in Indonesia in 3 years, Merapi in December 2023 killing 23, and now Dukono killing at minimum 3 on May 8th, 2026. And both disasters share the same pattern of elevated activity, official closure, physical access by hikers anyway, and fatalities in the restricted zone. What specific structural change to Indonesia's volcano tourism enforcement framework has been implemented between December 2023 and May 2026 that was designed to prevent exactly what happened this morning? And if the answer is no structural change sufficient to prevent 20 hikers from entering a closed zone, what is the plan for the next closed volcano that someone finds on social media? Right now, as you read this, 3 bodies remain on Mount Dukono. Search operations have been suspended for Friday. They will resume on Saturday. Due to ongoing eruptions, the situation is still considered unsafe for evacuation. CNBC, the mountain is still erupting. The ash column is still rising. The rocks are still coming from the crater. Alex Jangu said, by the time he and his German clients reached safety, the intensity was still the same. In Indonesia's disaster agency's statement, tourists and locals should not carry out activities on Mount Dukono while volcanic activity remains elevated. People should always follow instructions from local authorities. CNBC should always. Past tense instructions delivered in present tense sentences to a media audience that is watching the rescue operation unfold on the same platforms that made the mountain look beautiful and remote and worth the trip. In Singapore tonight, families are waiting. 2 Singaporean citizens are dead on a mountain in eastern Indonesia. Their bodies cannot be recovered until Saturday because the mountain that killed them is still erupting. 2 more hikers, their location still unconfirmed as of Friday evening, may or may not be accounted for by the time this search resumes at dawn. Indonesia has about 130 active volcanoes. Mount Dukono is currently on the 3rd highest alert level of Indonesia's 4-tiered alert system. CNN, 3rd highest, not the highest. The highest is reserved for imminent catastrophic eruption. 3rd highest is the level at which scientists say, do not go near the crater, do not enter the exclusion zone. We have seen the seismicity. We have seen the escalation. We have closed the mountain. The mountain was closed. The hikers came anyway. One of them was filming for content when the booming started. Alex Jangu felt the tremors, recognized them from years of walking this specific ground, and told his clients, we have to run. He can be heard in the footage saying, I hope they're still alive. Some of them were not. And on Saturday morning, when the eruption pauses long enough for the rescue team to ascend, the mountain that killed them will still be at alert level 3, still officially closed, still producing the elevated seismicity that the PVMBG has been monitoring since April 17th. Still there, still active. Still more beautiful than dangerous to anyone who has never felt what the tremors feel like from 100 meters below the rim.